So welcome back to another video on the channel. Now in this video, I am going to be covering a very frequently asked topic, and that is how do you conduct client check-in calls, client onboarding calls, what's the structure behind them, how do you conduct them, who's present on them, etc, etc. Okay, it's a very common question that I get asked, as I say, and I like to create videos around what you guys actually want, not what I think you want. And so in this video, that is the exact topic that we're going to be covering. Now, as always, guys, just before we jump into the video, make sure you go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. You guys know the drill. It hugely helps out with the YouTube algorithm. With that being said, let's jump straight into the video. So let's just jump straight into it. I don't want to beat around the bush. I don't want to extend this longer than it needs to be. I know your time is valuable. I respect your time. So as I say, let's just jump straight into it. Two types of calls: client check-in calls and onboarding calls, strategy sessions, whatever it is that you want to call them. Let's first go through client check-in calls. So what are these calls? Well, these are basically the bi-weekly calls that you have with your clients. When you sign on a new client, obviously it's time for you to conduct your service, but something that's incorporated into your service is, reporting. Now, there's a couple of ways that we go about reporting. I'm actually going to cover that a little bit later on here in the video, in probably the second half of the video, where we go through onboarding calls. I'm going to go through all the different types of reporting. But one of the methods of reporting is the bi-weekly calls that we have set up. So this is where you have one call every 2 weeks, right? With the specific client, you get it locked in. It's the same time every 2 weeks. You want to make sure that it's the same time. You don't want to do like, hey, what time's good for you for this week's bi-weekly call or whatever. You want to get it locked in, same time every other week. So on that call, what does the structure look like? What do you go through? Who's present on it? All that stuff. Well, to be honest, it's 4 parts. I look at it in 4 parts. Usually it's going to last anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. I have my bi-weekly scheduler call, my bi-weekly client check-in call scheduler. I have those slots open for 30 minutes, but I've got also a 30-minute buffer at the end of it because I do respect my clients deeply, and I'm more than happy to go overtime with specific clients if need be. So sometimes, as I say, it's going to be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes it will stretch to an hour. But as I say, inside of that call, I have basically a 4 kind of tiered structure. Now, who's on the call quickly before I get into the structure? Well, it's going to be your client. It's going to be whoever else on the client's end. Sometimes it will be the client and their partner, client and the marketing, the CMO of their business, whatever maybe the structure is. And then on your side, you want it to be you and your media buyer. Now, when you get to a certain level, you just want your media buyer to conduct it, because at the end of the day, they're the ones in the ad account. They know 100% what's going on inside of that respective client's ad account. So you want to get to a point where your media buyer is conducting, but I'm assuming most of you, it's going to be you and your media buyer for the time being. Okay, so now let's jump into the 4-tiered structure. The first thing, tier number 1, is basically touching base, right? I absolutely love each and every one of my clients. I don't have any clients that I resent. I don't have any clients that are like, oh, this client's such a pain, this or that. There's none of that. I love every single one of my clients, and every single one of my clients, myself and them and my team as well, we all have a very, very close relationship. So the first point that I genuinely get excited for, with the calls that I do have, that I do still take, is I just want to see how they've been, right? And I know it seems like, really, is that a point, like small talk? For me, it is. Like I make a point of it. I make sure that I cover how they've been over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, we conduct communication through Slack on not a daily basis, maybe like a bi-daily basis, every 3 days or whatever with each client. But as I say, I love to just see how they've been, what's been going on in their lives, how have they been, how has their family been, how's their kids been. I love to know, because as I say, I'm genuinely interested, but also it builds a very, very good relationship with your clients, and you just become friends. And as the saying goes, and this is not why I do it by any means, trust me, this is not why I do it. I'm just genuinely interested in my clients' lives and whatnot. But also, I kind of like a perk to it as well is that it is very hard to fire friends. So that's another perk to it. But yeah, so that's what I do when I start off my bi-weekly client check-in calls. From there, we transition straight into ad performance, and we go straight into what's been going on in the ad account over the last, we have weekly reporting as well. And again, I'm going to dig deeper into that when I discuss how I structure my onboarding calls here in a minute. But overall, we're able to go a lot deeper, on an actual call in terms of ad account performance and whatnot. So we like to go a bit deeper, how things have been going over the last 1 to 2 weeks. So as I say, we always go over ad performance in the last 1 to 2 weeks. And then we also, what we do is we take that performance and we compare it with key KPIs. So what is this client's ideal numbers and how are we comparing to that? Are we slightly above them? Are we below them? What's going on? How are we comparing? Because that then also, can see the actual performance. How are things going? Are things good? Are things bad? Is a $50 CPA good or is it not? Is a $100 CPA good or is it, it enables us to compare very, very easily. And then from there, what we do, and this is kind of the third point, this is where we now start to detail what our plans are moving forward. This is a really, really important point. You never want to explain or bring up issues without following those up with solutions. So for example, if a client's ideal CPA is $50 and your ads are running right now at $63, well, that's an issue. Right? And you never want to say, oh yeah, look, we're above KPI right now. We're running at we're running at $63 CPA when ideally, obviously we want that to be around $50. You don't want to say that and then that's it. You always want to bring up, if there's issues or whatever it is, always bring them up and instantly follow up with a solution. We're at $63 CPA right now, but I'm not too stressed because over the next week, we're going to be doing bang, 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 and bang. And all of those things, A, B, C, D, all those things have been proven to work in the past. It's working really well for other clients right now. We're doing X, Y, and Z. Always kind of detail what you're going to be doing to combat the issues or even the other way, right? Even if things are going really well, your ideal CPA is $50 and you're currently running at $30, right? Well, still, detail what you're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. Well, now we're going to ramp up because we've got a $20 buffer that we can really leverage and scale into. And even at that point, once we scale into it, even if we scale into it 50%, it's only going to be at $40 CPA, right? That $20 we scale into it $10, 50%. We're at $40 CPA. We're still way below ideal, our ideal KPI. So we're going to start to really ramp. And obviously, I know you guys, that's kind of, your goal. You want to get to $1 million a month, and we're going to be able to do it by doing X, Y, Z. Right? Detail what you're going to do moving forward. And then finally, we finish off the call by just, inviting questions from the clients and, just see how they're feeling. Have they got any thoughts? Have they got any questions, queries, comments, ideas, whatever it is? We just invite conversation from their end. And, obviously, maybe sometimes that'll spark conversation, sometimes it won't. For example, I had a client last week who I hopped on a check-in call with, and he had nothing. Things are going really well. And there was nothing that he could, there was no issues that he had. There was no questions that he had. We literally just went through the first 3 steps. Those first 3 sections that I just mentioned to you. I got to this point, I invited questions, and that was it. He didn't have any. He literally just told us about this new event thing that's coming up, but that was just kind of just so we're informed. It was nothing really too important, and that was it. We ended the call. Other times, maybe there's a sale coming up or whatever it is, or maybe they have a question like, how come, this is dipped, but that's increased, or how come you've done this over that, or whatever it is. We'll go through that, we'll answer those, and at that point, we end the call. It's really as simple as that. It's just to touch base with the client, see how they're going, see where their head's at. Obviously, it's for them to see where our head's at, what we're thinking with the ads, what we're thinking with the performance, what we're doing based on the performance. Things are not going well. What are you doing to combat it? All that type of stuff. And that's it. That's how we structure our bi-weekly client check-in calls. So moving on, again, I don't want to waste any of your time. I want to get to the point and move on. So moving on to onboarding calls, strategy sessions. When do you have these calls? These calls are had when the client completes the onboarding process and they book in their first call. That's the onboarding call. This gets them, basically indoctrinated into your agency, get everything set up. And I'm going to go through the structure here in a minute. Who are on these calls? Well, it's the exact same again. Once again, it's the exact same. Right? It's the client, it's whoever else they want on their end who's going to be inside of the process. Sometimes clients have, they assign their, CMO, or they assign their CEO, or whoever it is, right? They may assign somebody else to really work closely with us. So they'll be on the call as well. And then on your side, it's going to be obviously you always need to be on the onboarding calls, by the way. Even if you don't do the check-in calls, the bi-weekly check-in calls, always take onboarding calls because it's their first touch, it's the client's first touch point. And in the first month is when the client is most, up and down, and the emotions are kind of all over the place. It's a very turmoil time, right? Inside of that first month is when the client's most volatile. They're like, checking everything because it's their first month working with your agency. It's a pretty big thing. So for that first call, make sure you're there, because if you're not, it's going to set a very, very bad tone and they're not going to like it. Trust me. So make sure you're on the onboarding call and make sure your media buyer is on the onboarding call. So now moving on to the actual structure of said onboarding call. Again, there's another 5-tiered structure for the onboarding call. I'll have a 5-tiered structure, and basically it's as follows. So first things first, as soon as you hop on the call, always express how excited you are to have them on board as a client. If you're running your agency correctly, if you're in any one of my programs, you should be running it correctly, and you most likely will be, because I drill it into my students all the time because it's the most important thing. Only sign clients where you 100% know it's going to be a home run. right? And so when you sign clients of that nature, you know, you're going to be pretty excited to have them on board. So just express that, tell them, guys, I'm so excited to have you on board, XYZ, right? And in that kind of first stage, when you open up and you start the call and whatnot, also introduce your media buyer, okay? Introduce who they're going to be working with very closely over the next 12, 18, 24 months, whatever it is, okay? Introduce them in a way that's kind of really lighthearted, you know, maybe crack a couple jokes here and there, and just really kind of ease that anxiousness maybe that the client may have, because as I say, you got to remember, it's a pretty big thing from the client's end, right? They're working with a new agency, they're moving their entire marketing department basically over to you. So, you know, just ease them into the process, introduce them to your media buyer, express how excited you are to have them on board as a client, and now we can get into the real kind of structure of the onboarding call. Second stage, something that I always do is I just ask the client, I'm like, guys, look, obviously we've not spoken since you've progressed through the onboarding process. Is there any, was there any issues that stem from it? Was there any questions that stem from it? Was there any problems or any queries or comments, anything like that? Did anything of that nature stem from the onboarding process? Hear what they've got to say. Sometimes they're like, no, it was all perfectly fine. Most of the time it is, to be honest, because the onboarding structure that I use personally, and that's obviously inside a Quantum Leap e-com agency program that I give away, it's just a plug and play inside of that program. Because it's structured so tremendously well, usually there's no issues, but even if there is the one or two, the one-off question or whatever, always get that answered out of the way straight off the bat, okay? That's what I do in stage 2. From there, I go into stage 3, and that's where I basically set them up inside of Slack. So I walk them through, I make sure that they understand how to use it. I make sure that I set the expectations as well. I do this in the onboarding, but I also do it on onboarding call. I mentioned that all communication is held inside of Slack. Anything outside of that will obviously be ignored. And, I make sure that they understand how to use it and whatnot, just so that they're not, maybe they're emailing me. It's not because they want to email me, but it's because they don't understand how to use Slack. Most of the times people do. So I just make sure they get enrolled into that successfully, that, they get inside of the channel, messages get sent, notifications are on, all that type of stuff. And then I go into stage 4. And this is probably one of the more important stages. Well, everything's important, but this is a big stage. Reporting. I go through how we go about reporting. So I explain basically 3-tiered reporting structure that we have, which is the Slack updates, Slack reporting that we do. So we do a Loom video as well as written updates. Then I explain the bi-weekly calls, as I was telling you guys before, bi-weekly calls. And it's on the onboarding call that you lock in the bi-weekly calls time, okay? So every other Friday at 4 p.m. you have a call with client A, right? It's the same time every single call. This enables you or your team, whoever it is that takes the calls. If it's both of you, then it allows both of you to structure things very, very easily. Every other week at Thursday, 12 p.m. or whatever it is, right? You have a call with this client. That makes it very, very easy. Do not set the calls variably. So it's like every other week when it's time to have your bi-weekly call, you then message and see what time works best for that week. Don't do that. It's very messy. Operationally, it's very, very taxing. It just doesn't work, okay? Set up the time, schedule it in on the bi-weekly call, create it bi-weekly for the next, however long, okay? Super, super important. And then that's locked in. And then finally, I explain our reporting system in and of itself as well. Just walk them through it so they know how to use it, they know how to leverage it, they know how to, if they want to check stats and whatnot, they can very easily. As I say, they're also aware of our structured reporting process that we have, as I say, the Loom videos, the written updates, the bi-weekly calls, and the reporting system in and of itself. And as I say, that basically enables them to understand that is what we're setting as an expectation. Like they can expect every single Monday they get a Loom. They can expect this from us, okay? And then finally, we go through actually setting. So this is the 5th stage. We go through setting expectations for the ad performance. For example, as I said before, in the first month that a client's with you, that's when they're most volatile, right? They're most like they kind of don't know what's going to happen, right? Because they've never experienced anything with you before. Now, if they're expecting a 10 ROAS in 3 days, they're not going to be a happy client, right? Because even if we get them a 5 ROAS or a 6 ROAS in 3 days, it's not the 10 that they're expecting. So even though we're still generating a 6, 7 ROAS, for example, they're not going to be happy because they were expecting a 10 ROAS, right? So we need to set the expectations, and that's what you do in the 5th stage of the onboarding call. You go through how this first month's going to look. After the first month, they're going to be pretty comfortable with, how things work and whatnot. They're going to understand how it works, the process behind it and whatnot. But for the first month, they kind of don't know what to expect. So you need to set those expectations so that they know, they understand, and anything above those, obviously always under promise, over deliver. So anything above the expectations that you set is going to be a huge bonus, right? If you do set, you could basically get the exact same results, but if the expectations was either side of it, it's going to depict whether the client's happy or not. If a client's expecting 2 ROAS and you get a 5 ROAS, they're going to be very, very happy, right? If the client's expecting a 10 ROAS and you get that same 5 ROAS and the same daily spend, all the numbers are the same, but because their expectations were so much higher, they're not going to be happy, right? So you need to set them so that clients are always happy, and that's what you do in the 5th stage of the onboarding call. So I hope this brought more clarity to how to structure calls, who attends the calls, when do you have them, and all that type of stuff. I don't think there's any other videos on YouTube like this. And as I said before, it's one of the most common questions that I get. So as I say, I hope this was valuable to you. And as always, if it was, go ahead, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video.